I just finished recording the video about my homemade automatic tool changer for the CNC router. If you haven't watched that video already, do it. It's one of my masterpiece projects. I can only recommend it, of course. But then this video here will also make more sense. So to make this project work, I had to sacrifice the last 25 millimeters of movement of the machine. So now the current wasteboard is too long. I could just cut it shorter and be done, but I also want to improve a little bit on it and make some changes. On the current wasteboard I had this dog hole system and made these special dogs. And with them you could easily position your work pieces. So for example like this. And now this corner is at a known location, and that's mostly the 0 point that you start a program with. But I never really used the dog hole system in the way I thought I would. And when I did, mostly the same locations, so most of them were unused. But what I did a lot is double-sided machining, and to get the position right for the second side, I always used pinholes and made the same holes in the wasteboard. So then you can pretty accurately align it for the second side. So instead of a grid with big holes for dogs, I would rather have a grid with small holes for pins. Because with them I can do the same as with the dogs and at the same time use them for double-sided operations. Then at the moment I have these slots for my drop-in clamps. And they are wonderful. They work with these kind of T-nuts embedded in a 3D print. When you drop this into a slot and start tightening the bolts, the nut automatically twists and then you can pull on it. And as you loosen that bolt, it rotates the other direction and you can pull it out. With the T-slot in the base table I also have quite a bit of travel. That makes for pretty fast clamping setups, so I definitely will make these slots again. Problem is, I only have 4 of the slots running the whole length, because I only made the wasteboard the size of the machining area. I didn't use this here. Now when I have a big workpiece, for example, I can't clamp it here with these slots. I never had overhanging workpieces so far like this, so I see no reason why I shouldn't use this extra space on either side and create another 2 slots. And the last problem, it sometimes happens that a workpiece slightly overlaps the slot, so I can't use it, and the next one is too far away. So I need some kind of more clamping option in between the slots. The overall construction with birch plywood strips on the bottom for strength and a layer of MDF on top works great. I won't change that. This allows me to machine into the wasteboard so I get clean edges on my parts. I can screw into it and flatten it from time to time to get a fresh and flat surface.
Finally he stops talking and does something. Now I started the construction by cutting slightly oversized plywood strips and put them on the machine using the old dogs for the last time.
I now loaded all the tools I need into the magazine and I'm ready to cut.
The first operation is just drilling holes. Then the machine waits for me to screw the piece down and remove the clamps so I can work on the edges afterwards. Then switching to the next tool. The hissing noise you can hear is the pressure multiplier working. With that smaller tool I cut hexagonal holes to insert nuts later into. Then switching to a bigger tool again to mill the edges that will create the T-slots when assembled. 1 roughing full slot and 1 finish pass. It's a down cutting bit and leaves no tear out on the top. For the side pieces it's the same, but there are also added slots on the side. And also a cutout for the tool length sensor. The pieces are bigger than the machining area, so I had to finish the slots and cut to final length manually. Also the counterbores for the mounting screws are quicker done in the drill press.
Next is installing all the nuts. I made the holes slightly undersized so the nuts would be stuck in there for good. Here I finally also found a proper use for a slotted screw.
Using regular nuts is a lot cheaper than T-nuts or threaded inserts, and since all this is for the CNC router, it made sense to cut hexagonal holes with it. To be able to remove the old wasteboard, I have to access the bolts, and since everything is glued, the only way was to drill through the MDF. Fortunately, I have dust collection set up.
I can reuse all the screws, and they are M6 washer head screws with this kind of T-nut.
Then it only takes some wiggling to drop the pieces into the slots.
Next I need to align all the strips to a specific location on the machine bed, so in the end the holes with the nuts underneath end up in the right spot. And I do that with this board that I machined some holes into and according alignment holes in the wooden strips. Since I don't have 6mm pins at the moment, I'm using end mills and always stick one through the board and one strip. Now all strips are connected and perfectly spaced apart. The XY0 position of the machine is here, and I now move to the middle in Y and a little bit forward in X. And then the spindle ends up in the exact location where the whole of the middle strip needs to end up. Now I have a router bit chucked up backwards, can slide all the strips towards it and plunge into the hole. Now this hole of the middle strip is at the exact location I want it to be, but the other end can still wiggle around and rotates around this point. So I now roughly center this by eye and feeling and temporarily tighten the bolt. Move forward to the other hole location and do the same thing here. Now I temporarily tighten up this bolt and check the front again. And now all the strips are aligned and in theory at the exact same location as in the 3D model. So now I can tighten down all the bolts. Now I can check again. Looks good. And here as well. Now the base is done and I can glue the MDF on top. I got these two offcuts with a couple defects for free and they're perfectly suitable.
I don't want to have too much glue squeeze out here, so I'm applying a thin, even coat with a roller. The clamps of my choice is gravity. I ran out of material chunks quickly, but ironically, clamps work here as well. The MDF strips on the side are outside the machining area and I can just screw them down. Now I can run the program for finishing the wasteboard. I move to the machine X and Y0 location, probe the current surface height and start with the most nerve-wracking part, cutting around the tool bank sensor, where I chose a fantastic camera angle to show you the out of focus gantry.
That went well, and now the contour of the round over in the MDF matches up perfectly with the one of the plywood underneath that I cut before. And this gives me pretty high confidence that all the alignment is spot on. I have to remove this one by hand because it's out of the machine area, but that's okay.
So then changing tools for cutting all the holes. Here and there I checked if the holes line up with the nut underneath, however I couldn't have changed anything if it went wrong. Next tool change for finishing the slots.
I couldn't machine the whole slot because it's longer than the machining area, so I have to finish this by hand, but that's okay, I only have to do this once. The flattening bit is bigger in diameter and can reach everything.
Speaking of the flattening bit, let's change to that and finish the wasteboard surface. Also here I had to make sure to avoid the tool length sensor.
And now I have a new and perfectly flat work surface again that works with the automatic tool changer and also has more clamping options than before. All the T-slots work, pins or end mills have a snug fit in the holes for alignment, but at the same time I can use them for clamping. If the holes wear out over time, it's no problem to renew them because it's part of the spoilboard. I just cut a bigger hole, glue in a plug, recut the hole, and I'm done. Big workpiece example from the beginning. With the additional slots, I can also clamp it from the side. I only have to make sure that the clamp doesn't go past the wasteboard because there it would crash with this part on the gantry. I hope I could give you some inspiration, at least for me. This is now a solid base to start any part I want to make with this machine.